and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us live today. We are thrilled to have you with us, whether you're tuning in from work, home, or somewhere in between. Thank you for making time for this LinkedIn Live. Today's session focuses on a theme that is gaining strong momentum in the GCC ecosystem: leadership in new capability specialization within India GCCs. For those less familiar, this is one of the distinct categories in the Nasscom GCC Awards, where we celebrate GCCs that have shown exceptional agility and a business first mindset in addressing previously unsolved challenges in non traditional areas or emerging enterprise challenges. So, for our viewers, our focus today is not on traditional functions such as IT, finance, or contact centers, which we know have high adoption across the industry, but rather on emerging capabilities that are being conceptualized, co created, and incubated by GCCs. Uh, we are also proud to have partnered with Nasscom in driving this initiative for the third consecutive edition, with the most recent one concluding in April 2025. Uh, this is the third session of a special series where we spotlight the journeys of the award winning GCCs. We are excited to host a panel of leaders today who bring first hand experience and bold perspectives on what's truly working when it comes to building and scaling new capabilities. Uh, for those who don't know me, I'm Nikhil Malhotra, Vice President at Everest Group. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to work closely with GCCs and enterprise stakeholders, and have been partnering with Nasscom in orchestrating the GCC awards in both 2023 and 2025. Um, I can say that what we are about to hear today reflects the real on the ground impact of building new capabilities if and when done right. Okay, before we dive into the discussion, let's warm things up for those who are watching us live. In the comments, do tell us where you're joining us from. And second, what's the one truly new capability in an emerging area that you have built that has really solved for a vital and a persistent business problem? What we'll also do during the session is we'll obviously take your questions as and when they come up or towards the end. So please make sure that you continue to share the questions. With that, let's get started. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves before we dive into the key themes. So let's just starting in an order in which I can see people on my screen. Shrikant.
Hi, Nikhil. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and happy to be on this LinkedIn Live session today. My name is Shrikant Srinivasan. I'm the Vice President, Head of Membership and Outreach at Nasscom. I work out of Hyderabad, and incidentally, today I'm joining this session from Chandigarh. Uh, Good to meet you all, and I look forward to this session. Thank you.
Nice to have you, Shrikant. Balaji.
Hi, good morning, Nikhil, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you all in this session. So I'm Balaji Narasimhan. I head the GCC operations for TransUnion India. Looking forward to discussing with this panel and with you.
Vikram.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vikram Sharma. I'm an Executive Director for Divisional Controls and Central Functions at the NAB Innovation Center in India. I lead teams dedicated to building future-ready capabilities across legal and compliance, risk management, sourcing, including third-party risk. Our focus is on delivering safe, simple, and efficient outcomes for our customers. It's a pleasure to be here on this panel and to talk to all of you this morning. Thank you.
Great. Anish.
Yeah, thanks, Nikhil. A very warm good morning to all our audience listening in. My name is Anish Agarwal. I'm a Vice President with Everest Group. I co-lead the charter for our GPS GCC clients, and I'm based out of India. Pleasure to be part of this panel and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much for taking time for this discussion, everyone. Let us get started, right? I think, and I want to talk about the motivation in building new capabilities first, right? Now we understand that leading GCCs are no longer really content with just scaling existing services. They are proactively building new capabilities that drive enterprise value, and that's not surprising because the way GCC is positioned, it has a greater view of all the enterprise challenges or most of the enterprise challenges. So there is definitely an opportunity to not just solve for problems, but even to spot them. But what we also understand is that this means that you're offering venturing into a more of a high risk, high rewarding territory, right? So what becomes important is what is really triggering such bold moves. Is it like strategic push from the enterprise, a market shift? Is there a lot of conviction within the leadership, within the GCC leadership, right? So Balaji, let me start with you. For a mature GCC like yours, what catalyzed the decision to expand into new areas? Was it enterprise demand, innovation ambition, mix and match of these factors, or another factor?
Yeah, it's a mix and match, Nikhil, but let me start one by one. The initial trigger, of course, has to come from the enterprise. So, the for building any new capability or say going after any emerging capability, like the enterprise was very clear that like it's both the enterprise strategy and priority. GCC was one of the top priority. So, for any emerging new what I say like capability that comes in, GCC was automatically the choice for the enterprise. So that was the key driver. Apart from that, like we have a very good talent pool in India, as you know. Like we have one of the best talent pool. Like in terms of like any new capability that comes in, we are able to adapt to it as an Indian market, considering the sheer number demographic dividend that we have and sheer number of people who graduate. I think that is something we are able to tap into very well. And on the GCC side, specifically a matured GCC like us, who have been in the system for a long time and matured, like one of the key drivers is always to create a value. So like GCC initially started as a cost player, then eventually becomes a value player. So any new emerging technology or any capability that comes in, GCC is always the best choice. Like where GCC wants to put up their hand and like show to the organization that they continue to create value for the organization. Want to take two examples to clarify this, both a business emerging capability, no longer emerging ones, much evolved one, but just wanted to take two examples. If we take when say buy now pay later came from business side, it was a big trigger, or the more recent generative AI that came in technology side, that was also a big trigger. In both these cases, I think these are adjacencies. The way the mature GCCs operate, the entire end-to-end spectrum, right from say getting the business requirements to getting the design and technology out, and also offer consumer service. That end-to-end spectrum is sitting there in GCCs, mature GCC. So that means we are able to take this emerging technology across the end-to-end spectrum, right from business till the end consumer. So I think that is one benefit also that is driving the new emerging capabilities into GCC. So whatever you asked, the answer is in a summary, a combination of all factor, enterprise, GCC's inherent ambition, or say like the goal to create value, and also the ecosystem that we have within GCC that enables us to scale up and take over these new emerging capabilities. That will be my answer, Nikhil.
That's great to know, Balaji. Thanks for your perspective. Shrikant, I would like to bring you in. Now, from an industry lens, what are the typical triggers that you see prompting GCCs to invest in new capabilities today? Are you seeing a trend in how and why they're doing this?
Sure. Thank you, Nikhil. I think just to probably, draw on from what Balaji started, right? Today, I think it's important for us to look at the larger shift which has happened over the last few years, especially the last 5 years, right? This has been a very decisive shift in how GCCs are positioning themselves. Today, it's not about, and I think some of this was also spoken about or dealt with very much in detail in the landscape report, which we released about 7-8 months ago, right? There's a huge today GCCs in India are not doing typical operational work alone. They have started doing very high quality work, and why is the shift happening, right? It's not about the centers are not pure play operational centers, but they're moving from portfolio hubs to they're moving to portfolio hubs to transformation hubs, right? There's a clear trend of value creation for the global enterprise. Yes, they are completing a lot of operational work. Not we will not deny that, but definitely a lot of transformational value creation work is happening from the country. Thereby, the ability of the GCC to deliver more to the parent enterprise or to the global enterprise is going up phenomenally. And all of this comes because of various things, right? The availability of great talent, availability at scale, the ability of the talent to absorb the newer technologies that's available today, and also understand how it is operated in that particular domain. Because when you do some of these newer capabilities and high value added work, it's both. it's not just technology, but it's also the domain, right? You need to kind of bring them together, marry them together, and see. And a couple of small examples here. If you really look at the adoption of some of the larger emerging new technologies that we're talking of in the last 5 years, we're taking a window of 5 years, say 2019, 2024, technologies like the AI, adoption of AI, ML, cloud, cybersecurity, blockchain, all of these, have moved. I mean, in the core GCC operations, they have moved phenomenally in terms of their, in terms of each of these GCCs adopting them and kind of delivering to the parent enterprise. AIML is just one example, which has moved up to almost 86% of the talent kind of doing that kind of work from India. That's one. Second is many of them today are multifunctional centers. See, they are kind of 90% of them handle end-to-end responsibilities. So it's not about just doing an operations, but how do you kind of do the work. I mean, kind of handle the operations, but also handle the product, the technology, everything just goes around it. And hence, I would rather call this of as not just value-added work, but about a leadership-driven transformation. A transformation that is driven around leadership, not just of people, but of product, of technology, and eventually the organizational bottom line and top line. That's the way I would look at it. It's no more a story of cost arbitrage. Yeah, you may get arbitrage, but it's all about the capability, the leadership capability that's being built, and the transition that's happening intentionally in the organizations, so that there's a strategic, futuristic movement towards it to contribute to the larger enterprise. That's the way I would look at it. Thank you.
Really well put, Shrikant. So what I understand is, one, naturally there is moving up the value chain in terms of the depth of services that can be delivered. Second, yes, the adoption of technology, the emerging technology, and how quickly that's getting embedded in your operations. Third, that you spoke about is how you're having operations and tech teams working together and identifying transformational opportunities at grassroots level, right? And then, yes,
Yes.
since you're part of it, you are naturally going to be more concerned about how the business is performing. So having a visibility. So that's really well put, Shrikant. Vikram, I would like to bring you in. NAB Innovation Center. As far as I know, it's just been around for like 3.5 years here in India, right? So, as a newer GCC, what was the trigger for you to start building capabilities beyond foundational services? How did you identify the capability to build on? What were the gaps or opportunity that you see?
I'm going to draw out a little bit on what Shrikant just said around capability and value. We've been, like you said, we've been around just for about 3 years now. And when we established NAB India, the objective was to develop deep capabilities aligned with our strategic priorities. It was to go beyond what would be your transactional services, but to deliver better outcomes for the bank. We began asking ourselves within each of our own domains, what is it that we could create which could land the most significant impact and add real business value to enhance the operational efficiency, resilience, as well as scalability. And that's where, if I have to talk about examples, we came up with this concept of legal shared services, which is slightly different from your traditional transactional type activities, wherein it is a complex activity. It spans across jurisdictions. It requires a lot of technical rigor, but as well as business alignment. We also recognize that we could leverage the talent pool that India has from a legal profession perspective, and that people could bring that strong legal acumen to create these high-performing teams. What we did essentially was we co-created this team along with our group legal team, with the aim to create more depth and address the real customer needs that were coming out, and not just a replication of work. What it has helped us is essentially to deliver better outcomes for our customers, but also our colleagues internally, by speeding up turnaround times, both through automation as well as leveraging the global time zones between the geographies that we operate.
Oh, that's thank you for sharing your insights there, Vikram. And I think, as far as I understand, going after a legal shared services within the first 3 years of inception is not an area which a lot of GCCs take challenge on, because it's not a scaled expertise or a scaled capability. It requires you to hire lawyers. It requires you to have people who understand cross jurisdictions much better. So yeah, that's again very interesting to hear. Anish, would like to bring you in. You advise clients day in, day out, breathe this space. What do you, again, from your assessment, what external factors, maybe technology disruption, shifts in talent, priorities, enterprise priorities, which are pushing GCCs to explore new capability frontiers? What are you seeing?
So, Nikhil, I would first of all start. It's a very exciting time for all of us, right? The industry is growing phenomenally. It is at an inflection point where technology can redefine or even reimagine things for us, right? I mean, everyone is talking about a lot of changes which are happening in that industry. I will just put my analyst hat and put out a framework out there. Is the technology itself is defining three aspects of operation. One is the work, second is the worker, and third is the workforce. Now, what do I mean by each of these, right? And how external factors are influencing these. So let's say if we pick work, right? What is being done? The work itself is changing, right? The technology disruption which is happening. Let's say automation was there. Now AI is there. Now even we are talking about agentic AI and systems of execution, which will take it to the next level, right? So all of these is redefining the way we will work, and on top of that, analytical capabilities, the way you put digital first, the way you put customer at the center, all of that is changing the way you operate or the way you deliver the work, specifically for GCCs delivering work to their enterprise, right? Now, the second aspect, if I come to, is the worker. Now, given the work is changing, there is a shift in the worker skill sets as well. Now, no longer the worker is just associated to your functional skills. They need to have that right set of domain. They need to have a right set of balance in terms of technology skill set. They need to have a right set of balance in terms of the leadership skill as well. So now GCCs, as Srikanth mentioned, over a decade or so, they have grown to a level where they are redefining things for enterprise. Now it's not just a follower or an execution aspect. They are playing a center stage and taking ownership of certain things, right? And we heard NAB and TransUnion examples as well. So in that case, again, the persona of the worker is also changing. The third one is the workforce. Now, what do I mean again by workforce is it marries the first two, right? The work and the worker. The workforce is the right mix of your talent pool. Now, that means today the organizations are globally distributed, which means that they need to work across multiple time zones, multiple geographies. The model itself, the sourcing model, we often say that, hey, is GCC the only model? Is outsource the only model? What I would put there is the right model is what you believe in. And right now we are seeing a trend around hybrid, which means that a mix of both worlds or best of both worlds in terms of GCC and outsource. So again, the workforce mix is also changing. And on top of that, the layer of hybrid and other aspects also plays a part. So all of these, I would say, plays a role in terms of how the future will be defined.
Great. And Anish, thanks for putting it in a way where you could anchor it around three Ws: workers, workforce, and the work in itself, how it's getting disrupted. So thanks for actually sharing this perspective. Now we understand the motivations better, right? The ambition, the leadership buy-in, the evolving business model, right? As our CEO rightly puts it, we are now living in a era of permanent crisis, which we call this as perma crisis. Disruption has become the new normal. So again, we can understand that. Now, the next question that comes up is, how do you scale these new capabilities, right? Because naturally, when you build and scale new capabilities, you require thoughtful choices in the operating model, talent strategy, which again, all four of you alluded to. How do you manage risk? How do you manage delivery? How do you govern that? Those who really get it right are able to redefine the value for which GCC brings to the enterprise. Balaji, I would like to bring you once again. What were some of the key levers that you used to scale new capabilities, right? Especially in managing delivery risk, integrating these capabilities into your global delivery model.
I'll start with talent, Nikhil. So since you mentioned talent, like we try to bring for any new capabilities, we do it as a mix, like trying to get tap into talent that's available in the external market for the new capabilities, and very importantly, upskill our team internally to face up for the new capabilities, like prepare them for the new capabilities. So it's a hybrid model we follow with respect to talent. And a few levers I would like to point out. The first one is on the partnership. Like primarily with we have done partnership in the past with consulting firms where we did a pilot Like we do a pilot of any new emerging capability that comes up, and then try to apply like what is the industry-wide norms that are being followed for the new capability, and try to apply internally through a workshop or a hands-on session on what are the things that apply to our business, so that we can focus on things that are, instead of just adapting a new capability, like see how it applies to our own business. So that is something we have done in partnership. Continuing on the partnership system, we also like tap into our vendor ecosystem. Like we have a pretty good vendor ecosystem working with us. So because they get a pattern of say multiple businesses for which they have applied solutions using the new capabilities. So that is also something we tap into. And with respect to delivery risk, we have a couple of very good programs internally within TransUnion. Specifically, I would like to highlight, like we build a capability pool, which is always focused on the future. We have this pool always available within our system. So any new emerging capability, this pool will be focused on that. They'll be trained on that. And more importantly, they'll do hands-on business projects, which will help them to mitigate the risk when they go to the actual program, when they do adapt this new capability. So that is something we do. We also have sort of like a marketplace where like see through crowdsourcing, like anyone can post a problem, and associates can work on it on any of the problem. They can voluntarily sign up and pilot some of the new capabilities and solve their problems using new capabilities. So this kind of approach helps in mitigating the delivery risk a lot. The last point I would like to point out is like on a governance framework, like say any new or emerging capability that comes in, we need to have a centralized or say enterprise-wide governance framework, which will make sure, like say, for example, if we take a generative AI, we are adapting to responsible AI practices. We follow one of the AI practices like EU AI adoption or one of them, so that overall there is a complete governance framework and we mitigate the risk before you open up on the new capabilities. So these are some of the things I would like to point out.
Thanks for sharing that, Balaji. Vikram, given your stage of maturity today and your entry into these new capabilities, how did you approach the scaling journey, particularly in setting up the right operating model and securing talent?
Like we said earlier, given this was a bit of a non-traditional area that we were looking into, we had to adopt a slightly different model. What we built was a hub and spoke model grounded in shared goals, accountability, and day-to-day connectivity with global teams to really understand what is it that we want to deliver. We invested early on in leaders who could think strategically and influence the outcomes that we needed across geographies, not just on tasks. We didn't want somebody who comes in just to manage the task, but we wanted people to really bring in that strategic mindset of being able to land such new capabilities in a bit of an unknown environment. Securing niche talent was equally crucial as well, because we couldn't really do that if we didn't get the right people. What we focused on was identifying professionals with not only the deep domain expertise in law, but also with a forward-looking mindset, who could think of innovation, who could think of emerging trends within the legal domain. And what we did manage was bring in people with that mindset. We could tap into talent where we had people with dual qualifications across geographies, specializing in legal and things like that. So that really helped us. Our early success really came from the fact that we were able to demonstrate some meaningful impact on the actions that we took. And everything that we built so far has largely been built in collaboration with our global team. I think that cross collaboration, as well as having the clear line of accountability with an understanding of what is it that we need to deliver, really helped in us being able to nail down that talent pool with an ability to scale as well.
Thank you, Vikram. Shrikant, if I were to ask you this question in a different way, right, and this is basis what you are in your day-to-day conversations with GCCs, how are they structuring their models and governance to scale newer capabilities more effectively, right? What are some of the common practices or innovations that are emerging?
Sure. Thank you. So, Nikhil, I think both Balaji and Vikram kind of alluded to some of these, right? See, today, the way you look at it, I mean, if today we're talking of GCCs moving from pure operational to a transformational hub. And obviously, then the overall operating model has to change. That's what you're asking me. Now, if you have to do that, the first and foremost thing that what I see today are people are investing on the fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals here? The fundamentals of an industry like this, which is purely a knowledge industry, right? One is skill, the second is innovation. These are the two fundamentals that people are investing on. And whether it's technology or domain, it does not matter. So on the skill side, I think, and we've talked about people, the GCC's ability to deliver on emerging technologies and things like that earlier, right? We talked about AI, ML, cloud, cybersecurity, and so on. And this is directly resonating in action. Today, we see that the investment on long term, right, the strategic investment, we talk long term. Today, we see about GCCs have over 185 centers of excellence in some of these areas, which means they've invested for the future for the parent enterprise. So that's where the change in the operating model is coming in. The second is the number of people that are being trained in this space. We have over 120, 130,000 people who have been trained in AI and related areas in the GCC world, who are able to kind of use this to contribute. Again, a very clear direction taken by the GCCs to contribute to the larger organization, the larger enterprise. The second is, I mean, when you're doing all of this, this is all about the skill, right? Whether it's catching talent young, going, I mean, and both of them talked about talent, right? How do you kind of go to some of the universities and colleges very early on, identify the right talent and start working with them, get the right talent, and then bring them up to scale, while you're also focusing on the existing talent, which is the inorganic training part, which I would call the lateral piece. The second piece, which is all about the talent and the skill. The second piece, which again is another fundamental in my view, is innovation. And innovation, all of this innovation cannot happen in-house all the time, every time, because every GCC, typically, if you look at the global size of the organization, they are large organizations, right? Now, how do you, in the current scenario, in the aftermath of the overall startup thing that we see around us, the startup fever that we see around us, how do you kind of leverage this piece to also kind of grow, right? So that's where the whole co-creation piece, leveraging innovation, using co-creation has come in a very large way, which also I see a lot of GCCs using in their operating model. How to kind of take their existing problem statements that they may have today, either internally or with customers or clients, to the startup world to see how they can quickly, in a very agile fashion, build a solution that they can take to market together. So these are two large pieces that I think are happening in the GCC space, which is changing the overall operating model. And last but not the least, I think the overall operating model today, given that the GCC has to become a transformation hub for the global enterprise, is built on critically three very important things that I would call the A and T, which is the autonomy that they get, the accountability that they have eventually, and of course, the trust they build around both of these. Because unless you have accountability and autonomy, you cannot, I mean, and obviously you need to have the trust. If you have all the three with the global enterprise, I think you'll be able to kind of invest and deliver for the future. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing this, Shrikant, and that A and T. That's exactly what we also see, but how you've put it together in a three-letter framework. That's quite powerful. Anish, let me bring you in, and keen to hear from you around what scaling models or talent strategies are really proving effective for GCCs today.
That's a very interesting question, right? Because see, howsoever we talk about technology, howsoever we talk about will AI take my job, we still go back and look up to our talent to get to a level where they can help us deliver the work better, right? So everything then boils down to talent. Now, in terms of skilling strategy or talent strategies, right? GCCs are becoming very, what brought you here won't take you there. Now, the model which GCCs are following certainly is they're formulating digital talent incubation hubs, which means that internally the focus is a lot on cross-skilling, upskilling their existing talent, right? During COVID, we saw that GCCs were pretty resilient, but post-COVID, we also saw a great resignation phase where there was a scarcity of talent, and specifically digital talent, which made the GCCs realize, okay, we can't just every time have a very big war chest and go on fighting for talent. We need to build our own talent, right? And we are at an inflection point where it is helping them build those kind of talent, right? So digital incubation hub or cross-skilling is one of them. The second thing is leadership development. Now, GCC specifically are having leadership specific programs within their organizations because, as I mentioned, right, until and unless you have the mindset of amalgamating yourself with the enterprise, aligning yourself with the broader enterprise or CXO agenda, GCCs won't be able to deliver what they are meant to deliver. And that is where having the leadership skills or talent is very much important, right? Shrikant already talked about the academic or ecosystem collaboration. The other point which I wanted to highlight from the standpoint is brand which you are creating in the market. You'll also see that there is a lot of emphasis being put on how GCCs are creating their brand in the market because again, right now what we are witnessing is, or in fact in the next 1 to 2 years, we'll witness again a lot of talent in the emerging tech space, and hence you have to become the best employer out there in the market to get best of the talent, right? So you have to do your own marketing despite maybe not being present directly in the market. We have seen that a lot of across industries, a lot of companies which do not have a local presence or a local brand in the market, they face challenges in terms of hiring the best of talent, right? The second, the another aspect is around the internal talent marketplaces which I've seen emerging. So there's a lot of job postings which happen internally as well, wherein people can apply and not just within a particular location, but from a mobility standpoint, it helps you enable and bridge that gap to leverage the true effectiveness of the global network which you have created in terms of your GCCs, right? Because right now you're not executing in terms of a standalone GCC, but there is a network of GCC for these global organizations. So you need to tap into that aspect as well. The emergence of skill-based framework is also there. With the GCC right now, you're not just focusing on role, but you're focusing on what skills you want to develop, and hence having a very much focused, structured program around skill-based skilling framework. I would just take an example. We were helping one of the technology firms wherein we have developed their skills framework, future skills framework, which went on to about 100 plus technology skills at 4 levels. How do you map your skill sets? How which skill set transitions to next level? What are the gaps which is there? What is the proficiency level, and so on and so forth. So right now we are seeing every organization pivoting towards skill-based framework because that is the most fundamental DNA of what you want to execute, right? I'll just leave at that. It's just that one other point which I had in mind was alternate talent model, so leverage of contingent workforce. Big again, going back to my point around hybrid, right? That is again a emerging trend which we are witnessing in the market. Yeah.
So, Anish, I think you touched upon some of the most very critical themes, right? You spoke about branding externally, but branding internally as well to your employees and to your enterprise stakeholders. We spoke about something which is very interesting around leadership talent building because we understand that stagnation is a real concern, even if and that's something which a lot of GCCs are still grappling with. How do they get them more closer to business? How do they get them skilled into different areas? You spoke about something which is skill based organizations or skill based frameworks where you can have a visibility into, and what Balaji was also leading to was around if these are the skills that we need to build for future, so we have people available or we have people I'd already identified. So that's a really nice way to put it. An open question for all four of you, right? When we spoke about the motivation, we spoke about how do you build and scale it. What is it that GCC should not do when it comes to building, scaling new capabilities? What are some of those bullet marks, war wounds, which you have learned in your journey and experience when it comes down to going after such areas?
It's no longer a number game. It's just the not the number of people we add new capabilities. That's one thing we should keep in mind. More the quality of the output or the value GCC creates should be the focus rather than just trying to build X number of people in a certain new capability. So that's something I would like to start with, Nikhil.
I can add a couple of things there. In addition to what she said, I think purpose-led and that we need to be delivering better outcomes for the customer. We need to avoid building things in isolation. I think strategic capabilities like these need trust and shared ownership with global stakeholders from day one. And maybe last one would be that we need to keep the processes lean learn fast, and improve as we go.
Great. No, thanks for sharing the perspective. Now, before we move on to the next set of
I can, sorry,
questions, oh, sorry, please, Anish, carry on. Yeah.
maybe Nikhil, I can add 2 more points to it, right? One, I would say don't treat skilling as one-time event. Many people feel that it's just one-time event. I upskill my resources. I don't need to do anything for next 3 years. That won't be the case going forward. And the second thing I would highlight is do measure the effectiveness of your training programs as well, right? Many a time we just say that, okay, we have spent this much amount, we have done so much certification, but the effectiveness is not just in terms of certification, but basically what is the outcome of those training programs as well. So measuring the effectiveness of your upskilling or training programs would be another one which GCCs typically a bit falter on. So I just point out these two things from my side.
Thanks, Anish. Thanks for putting that up. What we're going to do next is, again, as part of this collaboration with Nasscom and our constant endeavor to share learnings with the broader community, we've actually put together some key insights. This is again all coming in from the data that we got as part of the awards. The idea here is to differentiate the leading, or in what areas are the leading GCCs differentiating themselves from the rest of the pack. So let me point towards some of those areas that are really showcasing the difference. Starting off with the first one. Again, we spoke about it at the start of the discussion. Not surprising that many of the trailblazers or actually seem to be evolving or moving into the direction where the enterprises are moving towards. We're looking at business transformation, we're looking at product transformation, we're looking at services transformation, right? We spoke about the technology stack, we spoke about the growing kid on the block, Gen AI, and the new kid on the block, Agentic AI, and how quickly the pace of adoption or the pace to act on has really moved, right? It's not years, 1 or 2 years that GCCs are waiting and watching. They are now really quickly investigating whether there are meaningful outcomes that can come out of those use cases. Second one, increase sponsorship from the enterprise. I think it is not new and it's not surprising, but for building this capability, the ones who are really exceeding actually have a greater mandate. They are well integrated. They have deeper trust. I think there is a lot more trust that there's a lot of scope for experimentation that GCCs can do as think about building new capabilities. The second part, which we also saw leading GCCs differentiating themselves from the rest of the other GCCs, is around the decision making power. Yes, we talk about global roles, we talk about decision making impact, decision making influence. This is one clear area that we see GCCs having greater autonomy. They can take the shots, they can quickly pull the plug if things are not working fine. And also on the right hand side, if you were to think about the proportion of FTEs that are working on these capabilities, right, or technologies, or having that kind of a skill to work on those kind of use cases, that's far more higher than what we see in the other GCCs. Around 72% have around 15% of their workforce engaged in new capabilities today. Finally, is the impact part of it. And if you go to look at all the three impacts and all the data that you have seen so far and what you see on the slide is actually coming in from that objective survey that we had put together. Cost, if you were to look at cost impact, you'd say that the trailblazers actually have around 33% of ROI being achieved. But what's also interesting is that they have a time frame within which they're able to achieve that. Normally, we see these use cases taking time in sort of maturing and stabilizing. But here, within 2 years of span, there is a greater ROI that can be achieved. Operational effectiveness in form of how you are improving your SLAs, how you're improving your efficiencies, the cost savings, the arbitrage part naturally is all there. And the third part is the business impact, right? Customer experience, yes, because now you're solving for problems which you probably presumed did not exist. Employee satisfaction, because now your employees get to work on something which can sometimes be very unique to your company, your vertical, which is not out there in the market. and the new product success, because we understand that there are greater a propensity to think about solution, new products. So the rollouts part becomes interesting. Uh, Before I go on to the next topic, I also wanted to just help our audience understand and make them aware of Everest Group Engage event. After a successful event in Dallas, in London, and again happening in Dallas in September, we are excited to have our own event for GCC leaders and shared services leaders here in Bangalore. So the event is happening on 13th of November. It's in Bangalore. We are expecting great part representation for the GCC community here in India and other countries. So please do feel free to register if you haven't registered so far. But let me bring the conversation back onto this topic, right? We just spoke about business impact. We spoke about value. I think it goes as far as is talking about value as much as we don't talk about what are the levers to measure that value, right? And then for GCCs, the real differentiator is actually how do you sort of showcase measurable business impact, not just the number of use cases, the kind of, I would say, the ideas that you have tested out. Cost savings are table stakes. And we understand that leaders must demonstrate how capabilities drive innovation. Uh, Shrikant, let me start with you. What are some of the emerging benchmarks or KPIs that GCCs are using to showcase value from new capabilities?
Sure.
And also, are you seeing that this is adequately getting recognized with enterprise? Because more often than not, what we see is the KPIs that you track here in India or GCCs, there is a lot of, I would say, not a good connect with what enterprise leaders start expecting out of you. So, what are you seeing in the space?
Sure. Thank you. No, I think in a way, I think all of them kind of alluded to some of this in the past, right? First of all, I think the way we should look at the whole transformation today, I think we've all talked about the transformation today is a business outcome-led transformation, and that's something that we're seeing very clearly. When you're saying business outcome-led transformation, what really happens here is even the KPIs are on similar lines. Now, what happened today? The growth is not measured in terms of number of people. Today, the growth, and we've all seen this, right? In the last few years, more so with more and more automation happening around us, I think growth of the business and growth of people are non-linear in nature. It is no more the same, right? Your business growth can be X, but your number of people growth can probably be only 0.1x. It need not be at the same distribution as earlier. And hence, the kind of KPIs that our organizations are using today are also extremely very different. And so the first and foremost benchmark, which was many years earlier, is I was 5,000 people earlier, have become 10,000 people today, is no more a benchmark, is no more a KPI. Today, the KPI is all about saying, have I taken X number of projects and delivered a business outcome, which is eventually translated to either the top line or the bottom line of the organization globally, is the primary benchmark that people are using. And hence, to go back to my earlier point on the autonomy, the accountability, and trust, it becomes extremely critical. Because all of this, when you have to do all of this, it has to begin at the top. A transformation of this nature cannot happen bottoms up. It has to happen top down. And so the enterprise sponsorship, the global sponsorship for a project of this nature becomes extremely critical, and hence the KPI has to be owned and led from the top. That's the first. The second, of course, see, and again, if you really look at some of the other things that I talked about earlier, the creation of centers of excellence, the amount of investment that's happening on people, especially in the emerging technologies, all of this kind of revolves around that, right? It may, I mean, that may or may not have been a direct KPI, but eventually it contributes to KPI of the organization in some form in terms of contributing to the overall development or the overall growth of the organization. That's the way I would look at it. And hence today, and last but not the least, before I kind of close this, to say that today value recognition in the GCC world is not a real battle, right? Earlier, it was all about operations and how do I kind of show greater value. Today, I think over the past 3+ decades that GCCs have been in the country, I think it's something, a stamp or a badge that each one of them have earned through the kind of work that they have done in some form or the other. And definitely the kind of skill and scale that they have shown to the global enterprise, the innovation that they've created for the global enterprise, and the strategic fitment that they've created to the enterprise, saying that, we are part of the global enterprise to create something that we want to take to the market, to the investor globally. I think that's the way the KPI is getting measured today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, really well put up, Shrikant. Anish, if I were to ask you the same question but in a different way, uh, if you think about value articulation, what metrics or frameworks actually can help link new capabilities to enterprise outcomes?
Sure. I will just extend the thought which Shrikant mentioned, right? He mentioned around the scale aspect. Now, the other aspect where GCCs are always anchored upon is the cost anchor, right? I mean, we always talk about cost. Now, it seems good in the first few years of GCC formation because you're getting significant arbitrage from your source location. But after a couple of years, you start getting questioned, hey, what is the value which you're delivering? Because what you are delivering up till now becomes the new baseline for the GCC, right? And hence the cost arbitrage starts going away. Again, I'm not saying that cost arbitrage is not important. That still remains a big question when you decide your workforce strategy. But then the question starts pivoting towards how can I do more with less? What again Shrikant was hinting at, if you're creating 1.5x value, the headcount in fact cannot be 1.1. Now I'll question with AI, can it even go below 1, right? Can the pivot in fact change from headcount to generating more value and making that value 1.5 to 2x in fact, right? Now this is what the context which I wanted to set before I talk about value articulation framework. Again, one of the cases which we generally have seen GCCs struggling and where we provide support as well is, as you mature in your journey, right? I believe most of our audience might have had a sneak peek on our 5-stage framework or an equivalent of that in the industry, where you move from cost arbitrager to strategic integrator. As GCCs mature, you deliver significant value beyond cost arbitrage. The reason where GCCs again fail, and I would go back and say that, is the measurement and articulation of that value. You have to consistently show to your enterprise that you're doing more and enough for them. And that is where they should put more trust and they're getting the ROI. So the investments for the next year or next few years when you do your planning cycle shouldn't be judged upon just on the traditional metrics, but it should also be anchored upon the newer metrics of value generation. I'll get a bit more tactical here as well. Now, that will include metrics around efficiency. That will include metrics around effectiveness. Again, everyone does that, right? Cost per transaction, automation savings, and so on and so forth. I would say GCCs now should look at the experience if there's a CX or CXM teams for that. So pivoting, or let's say adding on to additional metrics from effectiveness, cost to experience-based metric or outcome-based metric will become important. Now, another aspect is around technology. We talk about technology. Now, there has to be a foundation of emotion and transformation metrics. The number of new filing. Let's say the time or cost of innovation. In case, let's say, you're formulating a COE, let's say if there is a COE in some GCC, can you measure the percentage of decisions where you help the enterprise by augmenting that AI as a factor, right? So some of these newer metrics you would need to incorporate in your day-to-day operations, and then only you will be able to justify your ROI or investments better, and then secure more funding or secure the trust of the enterprise that, hey, what I am embarking on a journey, I'm helping you reach somewhere with a specific tangible outcome. The word tangible is the key here. Dollar value, some tangible to showcase to your enterprise.
Yeah, Anish, let me ask you a few follow-up questions, right, on this particular topic around value and measuring value. More often than not, this becomes a we versus you, us versus them kind of a story, right? Now, as you think about, and again, I'm not the bleeding GCC stone, but there's always that perception that comes up. With respect to measuring values, what do you think? And this is again a question for the group also, is what are some of the things that needs to be very clear when you think about measuring value, right? Again, through KPIs and all, and the dollar value that you may be showcasing. So happy to know your thoughts on that.
So I would say there are multiple things. It's again a structured approach to value measurement. Now, first of all, you need to define your value dimensions or value levers. So KPIs actually come later. First of all, you need to define your value dimensions or value levers. Now, let's say you define your value levers as I am running about 100 initiatives this year. Some of them qualify under effectiveness, some of them qualify under effectiveness, some of that qualify under my top line impact, some of that qualify under bottom line impact, some of that are operational metrics, whatsoever, right? These are the classification of my value levers or dimensions based on which I'm taking certain initiatives for my enterprise. Now, once you have classified those value levers or dimensions, then you start allocating the right set of KPIs to each of them or the metrics to each of them. And then the next stage is you set the bar for how many number of what percentage of automation will you achieve in finance, what percentage of dashboarding or reporting or analytical penetration which you'll have in your customer data aspect. So all of those needs to be then in place, and then the third is the bar which I said, right? So first, value dimension or levers. Second is the right set of KPIs. Third is the right bar which you want to put for those KPIs.
Well, thanks, Anish. Uh, let me ask this question to the GCC leaders right now. Now, Vikram, right? How are you demonstrating the value of new capabilities to the NAB stakeholders? What measures or outcomes that you're tracking or mattering most today, or matter most today?
I think Anish covered quite a bit in detail in terms of the metrics. So I'm going to slightly take a different lens on what we look at. I think what we largely talk about is in terms of customer and colleague outcomes. That could be through faster response time, increased consistency, or reducing any kind of operational risk. If I have to specifically look at the legal shared services example, it really helped reduce our processing times, directly impacting our customers, where we could onboard them much faster. Automation helped in reducing manual handoffs and that manual intervention. Essentially, I think we're now seen more as trusted problem solvers who show up consistently, being accountable, and creating outcomes that really matter to the business.
Thanks, Vikram. Balaji, same questions, but again, recognizing that you've been around for the last like 8-10 years now in the GCC space in India. How do you track and communicate the value of the GCC today to your enterprise leaders?
I think mostly it was covered by Srikanth, Anish, and Vikram, but just wanted to highlight a few things. So the first one, we do something like a Microsoft recall feature, like which allows to go to the past and see how it was and measure how we are progressing currently. So we always keep a track of what has happened, say, what are the three parameters you already showed in your slides, Nikhil, which covers cost, then the operational efficiency, and also the value that we are bringing in, the business value. So effectively, we see it at different time points in time, before a new capability emerged or after a new capability emerged. We see what was the cost earlier, what is the cost now after introducing a new capability. We take the operations parameter, how much more we are able to handle in terms of volume, the additional business that was generated, then standard KPIs like how has the CSAT or NPS improved post implementation of a new emerging capability. So we have a timeline point of view where we are able to clearly say, say, once we had this new capability in GCC, what are the parameters, all these three parameters, cost, efficiency, and business value before, and what is the value now. So we are able to clearly benchmark and see on all parameters how we have improved or whether there is a degradation. So that is one thing we do. Two other things I think again want to take from your slide. I think we also measure the percentage of GCC leverage on top of these parameters which we measure. So that like we always have it as a KPI. So we clearly know how much the GCC is contributing. And recently, as we matured much in the last 2 years, we have been measuring what is the percentage of leadership that is operating out of GCC for that entire time-lapse initiative or the KPIs that we present. So as you rightly pointed out, like I think in one of your slides, like many people have started taking leadership roles. So what is the real contribution that GCC is making in terms of the leaders who are leading that new emerging capability? The percentage of leaders in GCC, that's also one KPI we put on top of all the parameters of cost, operational efficiency, and business value. So that is something I want to point out. And we also have like a network GCC like us. We see the leverage across all the 3 GCCs, how it is. That is also one key KPI we measure, because each of our GCC across 3 countries have different objectives. So we measure that also, how much it's leverage. So these are something on top of it. But the time lapse approach helps us to clearly quantitatively measure what it was earlier and what is the tracking now, the key KPIs that you have accomplished post a specific point in time after introducing a new capability. That's something I would like to add.
No, thank you, Balaji. I think some of the angles that you touched upon, one, having the leadership presence here in India and how their KPIs are getting measured. The anchor that you spoke about, how different GCCs also have their respective GCs KPIs and how everything comes together. So that's interesting. I have one question for you and for this group, but before we get into it, Shilpa, happy to take on some of the questions that we have received from the audience. I know we are at the top of the hour, but there are a few questions that have been pinged to us. So, okay, and again, question to everyone: can you please give few metrics to measure the outcome of training and skills? Again, open question to all. How is it that you are sort of tracking metrics on upskilling, reskilling?
I think this is a very tough one to measure, to be honest, but we had this question recently in one of our internal forums, so maybe I can give the same answer. So like here, I think post training, how effectively we are able to deliver. We in fact reskilled a complete team from one technology stack to another, and we did an complete internal training for 3 to 4 weeks for that team. Post that, within 2 months, again, the time lapse theory, which I talked about, how quickly are the team able to adapt and come back to the same level of a previous team, or like in the new technology stack, what they are using. That's one way we can measure. So again, we have to time lapse and see how we have done it. So that's one indicative way of how we can measure the effectiveness. So we know demonstratively, like say within 3 months or 4 months, this team was able to adapt to a new stack, got upskilled, and then were able to deliver the result. So that's how we one way we can measure it.
Thank you, Balaji. Anyone else?
I guess Balaji mentioned a very nice point, right? Yeah, sorry, Nikhil, if I may add to Balaji's
sure,
point.
please go ahead.
So basically, what he essentially was referring to now, it's not about course completion rate, it's about time to skill, right? Which means that from training to deployment, how effective you are, how quickly you can be deployed, it needs to be measured. So we need to move from traditional lens to an innovative lens of measurement. Now, let's say I'll again go back to my worker example. The worker is changing. Now you're dealing with Gen Zs, millennials. Now you can't have a test post your training and say, hey, give a lengthy test. You need to have effective gamified quizzes in a frequency every month, or let's say every 2 months, just to check whether they are up to date or not, whether they what they learned they have retained or not. So all of those new innovative measures needs to be brought in by GCCs in order to measure their tailing and skilling programs as well, right? Another one, if I recollect correctly, is number of trained employees applying those skills in live projects. So many a times GCCs at the start of the year, they say that, okay, we'll run these 10 programs. They allocate the budget as well. Now, to consume the budget, they do it. But my point is, are you even consuming those resources on live projects? So measurement would be the people who were trained, percentage of those people deployed on actual projects for what they were trained would also become important. So what I'm trying to say is the traditional metrics needs to be slightly refined to what GCCs are operating, the way they are operating today.
Thanks, Anish. Anything from you, Balaji, Srikanth, on this question?
No, I kind of resonate with both Balaji and Anish on this, and I think today the measure of skill is not about a course completion, but it is and also not certification. Because if certification was a measure of good skill, then I don't think we'll all talk of we'll not have the employability problem today, right? I mean, we have 1 million people coming out of our tech colleges today, and we say most of them are non-employable or not fully ready, right? I mean, I wouldn't say non-employable, fully ready. So I don't think certification is the answer. I think it is about one. Of course, certification is the temporary answer in my view, which is the first test of success. But thereon, putting them on the job and having this whole model of testing them on a time-to-time basis, right? I mean, a cadence of testing in some form or the other is when we really know the proof of the pudding, right? So that has to be done on a regular manner, in a very in a periodical manner. Only then you will know how it is happening. So that it's not a one-time effort, but it's something that has to be sustained with time, and hence very long-term in nature. Thank you.
Yes, no, thanks, Shrikant. Maybe just speaking from my experience also, naturally you would think about the effectiveness of those KPIs and then the degree of adoption. Anish mentioned that it's not always about completion as much as it's about redeployment. I would also take it to the cost part to it, right? Which is, or with the hiring time to it. How quickly can you fill those open positions for which you are upskilling and reskilling them? How does this reduce your hiring cost? Because at times when you were to think about your build versus buy, and the buy becomes more expensive, not only just the salaries part, but even the channels through which you're trying to hire them. So are those metrics that GCCs can track or should at least attempt to? In some pockets, we do see that. We do see greater intent there. But yeah, I think that's quite always a question that comes up. But again, I understand we are at the top of the hour. Before we move on with the closing remarks, I also wanted to give update our audience that we are having the next LinkedIn Live in September. That particular LinkedIn Live will focus on GCC collaboration with external ecosystem. Again, it's part of the Nasscom GCC Awards category. Would love to have the viewers dial in and participate and ask questions and understand perspectives from the leaders who are joining. But for now, I wanted to thank Shrikant, Balaji, Vikram, Anish for taking out the time for this discussion. It was truly enriching. And I hope our viewers learned greater insights into this particular topic. So yeah, thank you everyone and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.